sympathy for her and maybe see that there's some way she can be redeemed after all the shit she's done. Nuking all these people, killing all these people. Redeeming a character like this is not impossible. But the way they did it, I felt was like, okay, it's just like a one sentence that we're saying at the very end. It feels a bit rushed. It feels like you could have developed that part of her a bit more. It comes out of nowhere. I don't know, maybe they hinted at it earlier in the movie, or maybe manga fans probably know more about it, but as someone who's just watching this film objectively as a solo thing, I was like, it just feels like something that was just thrown in there to make you feel bad for her. It's like a single statement of exposition. It's not enough. And then Denji, basically, he still wants to be with her, and he still wants to run away with her despite everything that's happened, which shows that he's throwing away morals and his mission to be with her. A lot of people might hate that. This is what I mean by he doesn't really have an arc of growth. His arc is more of, can I find happiness and love in a woman who actually likes me? And it's revealed she might actually like him because she's exactly like him. They're both hybrids. There's a kinship there. She sees something in him because she's going through the same shit. She was used and abused as well. Maybe she does like him, and she goes to meet him at the cafe to run away with him and start their life together, but she's killed by Makima, who needs Denji. Makima reveals she's a devil herself, who's also using Denji. So she takes away the one chance that Denji has for happiness so that she can enslave him with boobs. That's what it is. It's a sad ending too. It's because you do end up feeling bad for her, but you feel more bad for Denji because Denji is like a horny little boy. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. He's not mature at all, and the one chance he has for like some kind of normal life, it's destroyed because of Makima, the woman who's trying to control him. So it's a very interesting dynamic that they have. This Makima chick. I think Makima is a great villain. I would have loved to see the dynamic between them two and how she's controlling him, and because usually we don't see that in a lot of movies. We see the roles reversed when it comes to genders, right? So now we're seeing a little guy being used and abused by this predatory woman who needs him for some reason that'll probably be explained in season 2. She's definitely a villain. Interesting, very very interesting. Look at this shit, man. Pretty sure this is from the show. Holy crap. So he went from real love to a woman just using his lust against him. It's an interesting dynamic, and I liked it a lot. A boy being used and abused by a woman/devil, and eventually he has to grow past his youthful love and horniness for her and become a man. I believe that's the arc Denji's going on in the course of the whole show. As a solo movie, people might be disappointed by the fact that, what the hell, why is Denji so pathetic, blah, blah, all that. It's like we saw a middle third of that arc, and nothing more. Fans will love it. Newbies will either be weirded out to the point where they don't like it, or they'll be like me, where they were entertained enough, and they liked it, and they appreciated it because it's actually good quality entertainment. It's well done, it's well made. It's just, I'm missing out on more of an experience because I'm not a fan. He has a ridiculous, horny motivation, but it works for the potential arc he will have. I can see a lot of people rooting for Denji to get past his horniness and just say, fuck all these women, I'm gonna do my own thing, and becoming a man. I can see that happening later, and that's where all this build-up is getting to, and I think that's cool. I think the idea that's cool. It's a very unique kind of protagonist that we don't see in movies nowadays. Interested in the lore and the villains too. The Gun Devil, Makima. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year for sure, and look, 2025 for me has not been that great. A lot of films that I want movies I've seen, we don't see in movies nowadays. Interested in the lore and the villains too. The Gun Devil, Makima. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year for sure, and the lore and the villains too. The Gun Devil, Makima. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year for sure, and look, 2025 for me has not been that great. A lot of films that I wanted to see disappointed me, and a lot of films like this low-key interested me more than I thought they would. Alright, I gotta make a top 10 movie list too at the end of the year. We'll see. But I like Chainsaw Man more than I was expecting. It's one of the weirdest shit I've ever seen. Denji's one of the weirdest protagonists I've ever seen. Some of the weirdest devil lore type shit. I've never seen stuff like this. But there's a lot of creativity in this that Hollywood doesn't have, and I can appreciate that. Alright? Fucking insane. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on a mission to take over Hollywood. But the army must keep growing. If you want to suggest video topics to me, or talk about your favorite movies or favorite film theories in a community with like-minded individuals, join the Zafy Discord now. Link is in the description and the comment section as well. Join us. This movement is just beginning. We're taking over Hollywood, one coke line at a time.
The first arc of the final saga, the Egghead arc, is finally over, but after 2 years of serialization, it can be incredibly hard to keep track of just about everything that happened. So in this video, I'd like to help you remember all the important moments of this arc, as well as all the small details and all the theories that have emerged out of it that you may have missed along the way. Let's begin, for this is the story of One Piece's Egghead arc, the beginning of the end. First of all, let's establish what the current situation was prior to the arc. The Straw Hats teamed up with the Heart Pirates and Kid Pirates and defeated 2 of the 4 emperors, Kaido and Big Mom, liberating the Wano country. Luffy and surprisingly Buggy were declared as the new emperors of the sea, with Buggy having been mistaken as the leader of the alliance between Crocodile and Mihai's country. Luffy and surprisingly Buggy were declared as the new emperors of the sea, with Buggy having been mistaken as the leader of the alliance between Crocodile having been arc, as well as all the small details and all the theories that have emerged out of it that you may have missed along the way. Let's begin, for this is the story of One Piece's Egghead arc, the beginning of the end. First of all, let's establish what the current situation was prior to the arc. The Straw Hats teamed up with the Heart Pirates and Kid Pirates and defeated 2 of the 4 emperors, Kaido and Big Mom, liberating the Wano country. Luffy and surprisingly Buggy were pirates and Kid Pirates and defeated beginning of the end. First of all, let's establish what the current situation was prior to the arc. The Straw Hats teamed up with the Hard Pirates and Kid Pirates and defeated 2 of the 4 emperors, Kaido and Big Mom, liberating the Wano country. Luffy and, surprisingly, Buggy were declared as the new emperors of the sea, with Buggy having been mistaken as the leader of the alliance between Crocodile and Mihawk, Cross-Guild, who are willing to use him as their pawn in their schemes. As the warlords are abolished, Amazon Lily is invaded by Marines and the new pacifista model, the Seraphim, and the island is almost breached as Blackbeard attempts to invade during the attack to steal Hancock's fruit. However, thanks to Rayleigh's intervention, they are scared off, but Kobe is kidnapped by Blackbeard in exchange for hostages to be freed. As Luffy, Law, and Kid set sail from Wano onto 3 different islands, and as Blackbeard attempts to invade during the attack to steal Hancock's fruit. However, thanks to Rayleigh's intervention, they are scared off, but Kobe is kidnapped by Blackbeard in exchange for hostages to be freed. As Luffy, Law, and Kid set sail from Wano onto 3 different islands, Luffy declares his true dream in front of his crew, which is something that goes even beyond becoming part king, which leaves Luffy declares his true dream in front of his crew, which is something that goes even beyond becoming part king. Luffy declares his true dream in front of his crew, which is something that goes even beyond becoming part king, which leaves all of them stunned. At the same time, Sabo has escaped from the events at the Reverie to the Lelouch Kingdom, but in an instant, the Lelouch Kingdom is eradicated as a massive blast of light falls from the sky, completely evaporating the island and only leaving a massive hole behind, similar to that of Enies Lobby. Some days pass, and as the Straw Hats approach their next destination, being an incredibly cold winter island, they locate someone drowning in a warm eddy, who turns out to be the supernova Jewelry Bunny, who in this case appears as a little child. Luffy rescues her, but he and Chopper fall into the sea with her, and Jinbei has to rescue them, getting separated. Meanwhile, the sun is attacked by a colossal robotic shark which sinks their ship, but are rescued from it by an also quite large mech called the Vega Force. From within the mech emerges a young girl who affirms to be Dr. Vegapunk, despite the fact that Vegapunk is known to be 65 years old. It turns out that Vegapunk has eaten the Nomi Nomi Nomi, or brain fruit, which allows his brain to grow infinitely and infinitely learn information, and he managed to find a way to split his brain into 6 clones on top of his main unit called the Stella, which all share different aspects of his personality, but are able to share memories by syncing together. Lilith is Punk 02, known as the mischievous aspect of evil, and is trying to pillage the ship of the Straw Hats thanks to the help of mechanized sea beasts that Vegapunk deployed to protect his island. However, Punk 01, known as Shaka, the aspect of good, orders Lilith over the comms to bring the Straw Hats alive to his laboratory, in what is known as Future Island Egghead, a land said to be 500 years into the future. Luffy, Jinbei, Chopper, and Bunny also make it to the mainland and are shocked by the island's futuristic landscape, its many holograms, food vending machines, and futuristic clothing, including boots known as dumb shoes that allow them to float around. The group briefly runs into Atlas, Panko 5, and Aspect of Violence, and later into a pacifista guard, the clones of Bartholomew Kuma, revealing that Bunny is in fact Kuma's daughter, explaining why she tried to rescue him at the Reverie. As Jinbei explains, what is publicly known of Kuma is that he was known as a tyrant of the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue who took the throne of his country by force and was driven out by his people, causing him to become a revolutionary and a pirate. However, Vegapunk convinced the government to make Kuma warlord in exchange for being able to command and clone his body in what would become the Pacifista Project. And this is because Kuma pertains to a rare race that is otherwise almost extinct that Vegapunk was fascinated by and wanted to study. Bunny, however, insists that there is more truth to these stories and that she has come to Egghead to face Vegapunk for killing her father, having now been turned into nothing more than an emotionless robot, which is also the reason why she cried during the Summit War. As Lilith guides the rest of the Straw Hats to Vegapunk's laboratory, we are told that Egghead is divided into 2 parts. There is the mainland known as the Fabrio Phase, where the researchers work in large factories, whereas Vegapunk's own laboratory is located on the Labo Phase, an artificial sky island that houses a little giant egg, inside of which is his lab. In there, the Straw Hats come face to face with the Seraphim, the latest stage of the Pacifista Project, where each of the warlords has been cloned and mixed with King's DNA, making them all artificial Lunaria, and while they are still infants at this stage, their might is unquestionable. At the same time, we're introduced to the other punks, including Panko 3 Edison, who represents the aspect of ideas, Panko 4 Pythagoras, who represents the aspect of wisdom, and Panko 6 York, who represents the aspect of greed. York in particular has the only duty to take care of the essential desires of the other punks so that they don't have to sleep, eat, or go to the toilet. Shaka briefly contacts Dragon, of all people, informing him that he has become aware he will die soon. Shaka then confronts the Straw Hats and explains to them that all the technology from Egghead is in fact ancient technology, attained from a kingdom from 900 years ago. He has been continuing the research of Ohara that scholars such as Clover sacrificed everything for in order to discover the secrets of the Void Century, all in secret so that the government doesn't find him out. He tells Robin that Saul actually survived the Ohara incident and took all the books that survived the burning to Elbaf, where Vegapunk has read them all to continue their research. The other group instead meets Stella, the main unit and original of the Vegapunks. He elaborates that he cut off his head and stashed it inside the giant eggshell in what is known as Punk Records, connected to it remotely through the Apple antenna on his head, and wishes that one day he can expand it to all of humanity to be able to connect to Punk Records as a sort of internet. He also introduces the group to this giant robot found among the scrap of the island, which is known as the Iron Giant, later revealed to go by the name of Emmet, with a manufacturing date spanning all the way back to the Void Century. 200 years ago, with it being pointed out that it's the same time that Fishman Island joined the world government, the robot suddenly appeared and attacked Marie-Joie, but ran out of power. Vegapunk tried replicating the robot with the Vega Force, but has been trying to understand what is the eternal power source that drives it, which he has developed into his prototype of the Mother Flame, an eternal energy source that could power technology infinitely, which is implied to be connected to the flames of the Lunaria, and that's how they were able to power the technology during the time of the Ancient Kingdom. A connection is further proven by the fact that Emmet attempted to attack Marie-Joie, which is where previously the god country of the Lunaria was located, but we don't know exactly why he did it. Vegapunk further explains that his dream is to one day make this endlessly renewable energy source available to the whole world so that wars for resources need not exist anymore, and wealth can be spread so widely that a macro world peace can be reached. But to do so, he needs to know more about the Void Century, which is what led him to continue researching the poneglyphs even after the Ohara incident, to complete Clover's studies. At the same time, for some reason, Kuma awakens at Kamabaka, and some instinct drives him to send himself flying towards Egghead. He comes crashing against the red line, so he climbs all the way to Marie-Joie, where Sakazuki tries to stop him. Kuma however sends himself flying once again, that would take him a full day to get all the way to Egghead. As Vegapunk urges the Straw Hats to help him escape the island, CP0 makes landfall with Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy from the Whole Kick arc, demanding to know what happened to several Cypher Pulse ships that came to investigate Egghead but never came back. Their official mission was simply to return as Bear, and they have orders now to kill Vegapunk, but the lava face is protected by a tight laser barrier called the Frontier Dome that they can't cross into unless it's disabled from the inside. Luffy runs into and briefly clashes with Rob Lucci, who has also awakened his fruit just like Luffy, and well, so did Kaku, but he's not really that relevant. From the lava face, Stella marvels at Nika, explaining that Luffy's fruit came to be from people's dreams and wishes for Nika to somehow exist. He elaborates that all Del fruits originated from people's wishes, as each fruit is essentially containing biological code that allows one to evolve into one of the many potential futures for mankind, such as to evolve into a specific type of animal or change the way their body works into what looks like superpowers. Thus, fruits allow people to attain their wishes, and he claims that fruits were born out of people's desires, but it isn't clear if this is literal or simply a metaphorical way to say that the desires led to their production. He further brings up the myth of how the Mother of Nature, the deity known as Umi, the sea itself, hated how unnatural and artificial Del fruits were, and so punished all of its users to drown in water. He further explains that he has found a way to clone Zoandel fruits, such as Kaida's fruit which he cloned, but while he hasn't able to clone Logia fruits, he was able to replicate the powers of Paramecia through an artificial blood he calls Green Blood, which is now given to the Seraphim to give them all special powers. Those who already had a Paramecia fruit retain it, such as S-Snake having the Charm Charm fruit, while others who didn't have Paramecia fruits, like S-Shark or S-Hawk, got powers such as the Swim Swim fruit and the Slash Slash fruit respectively, from Senor Pink and Mr. One. Vegapunk's bodyguard Sentomaru deploys to fight CP0 and protect his boss, as he has higher authority on the Seraphim hierarchy, with only the 7 punks and the Gorosei above him. Luffy tries to protect Sentomaru, but Sentomaru decides to stay behind to help Luffy escape with Atlas to the lava face, promising to help Vegapunk escape. As the punks gather, however, the Frontier Dome is briefly deactivated, causing CP0 and the Seraphim to enter the lava face. It becomes evident that there is a traitor among the punks, but they also remark that they have a traitor on their side, as Stussy shockingly betrays Lucci and Kaku and helps the Straw Hats with what is later confirmed in a databook to be the Bat fruit. It turns out that Stussy was actually a triple agent whose allegiance has always lied with Vegapunk. She is in fact the first clone ever made, originally created as a clone of Buckingham Stussy, former member of the Rocks who after the God Valley incident ended up freeloading with Mads, the laboratory Vegapunk once pertained to. Vegapunk is the only one that treated her like an actual person, which is why she has always sworn loyalty to him. At the same time, it's also revealed that Whitebeard and the original Stussy's alleged son, Edward Weevil, can prove his connection to Whitebeard thanks to Vegapunk, leading many fans to assume he might be a clone as well, or something along those lines. We also find out that Weevil tried to defend Whitebeard's hometown at Sphinx Island from the Marines, trying to pillage his supposed treasure, which doesn't really exist as it is the town itself, but ended up being defeated by Admiral Ryokugyu and thus taken by the Marines. At the same time, Bonnie confronts Stella once again and demands answers as to what happened to Kuma, but Vegapunk made a promise to Kuma to never tell Bonnie the truth. She however discovers a copy of Kuma's memories that Vegapunk was hiding in his laboratory, created through Kuma's own powers, and dives in to see the memories of her father. The memories prove incredibly traumatic for her, but she still presses on to figure out the truth. While she is distracted by the memories, Stella is abducted by the traitor and locked up in the lab's basement, alongside the vanished Cypherpole members, causing the other punks to grow in distress by the sudden disappearance of the main body, as well as by the Frontier Dome suddenly not working. As the group splits up to find Stella, they play a little game of Among Us as the Seraphim attempt to pick them out one by one. York is petrified by Ass Snake, Edison and Robin are heavily injured, Shaka is shot to death, and Pythagoras is killed too. Luffy and Zoro agree to briefly free Lucci and Kaku to fight back against the Seraphim. Meanwhile, York reveals herself to Stella as actually being the traitor, having only faked her petrification and having been the one who kidnapped all the Cypherpole members across the past months. 3 months ago, she contacted the 5 Elder Planets herself to confess Vegapunk's crimes, in exchange to be allowed to become a Celestial Dragon. However, it seems the government backstabbed her as well, making her panic. A ship of the Blackbeard Pirates also looms nearby the island. We then take a moment to step away from Egghead to see what has been happening around the world. The Heart Pirates arrived on Winter Island, one of the 3 islands after Wano, and they've been ambushed by the Blackbeard Pirates, who are hoping to pick off on one of the 3 supernovas leaving Wano. Given the powers of Blackbeard's fruit, as well as the newly introduced fruit of some of his other crew members, such as Burgess having the Strength fruit, Ogre having the Warp fruit, and Q having the Sick fruit, Law is defeated. However, Beppo is able to rescue him by turning Sulong thanks to a drug Chopper developed, and the crew manages to escape safely, despite suffering a bitter defeat. At the same time, as we see in a cover story, Kuzan and Ogre had visited Totolan sometime prior to kidnap Pudding for her ability to read the poneglyphs, while Caesar and Judge join forces to create Neomads in an effort to stop Vegapunk. Concurrently, the Kid Pirates arrive at Elbaf, where Shanks and his fleet, known for being incredibly weak and protected by his name, are stationed at the island meeting with their giant friends, with Dory and Broggy having reunited at Elbaf. Kid decides to confront Shanks, but Shanks defeats Kid with the same move that he inherited from his captain and adoptive father Roger, Divine Departure, instantly knocking out Kid. He takes Kid's road poneglyphs of Whole Cake Island and Wano and completely annihilates the crew. The key difference is that in Japanese, while it is said that the Heart Pirates were defeated but managed to escape, the Kid Pirates are instead completely annihilated. At the same time, Garp gathers Helmeppo, Hibari and other sword members such as Prince Goose and Kujaku to storm Hachinosu, the home base of Blackbeard, and thus rescue Kobe. He is confronted by Kuzan, who in a flashback we are shown how he joined the Blackbeard Pirates a year ago, sometime after the duel at Punk Hazard. There we are told that the final road poneglyph is supposedly being held by a man known as Far Scar, who is said to travel in a black vessel and has the power to create whirlpools. Back to the present, Garp manages to keep up the offensive against other members of the Blackbeard Pirates, including Pizarro having the Island fruit, Vasco Shot having the Glug fruit, letting him control alcohol, and San Juan Wolf having the Deca fruit, which allows a giant like him to become 10 times more gigantic. Kobe manages to showcase his incredible strength through his hard training, allowing the group to escape, but Garp stays behind to ensure that they can run away, essentially exchanging the hostage situation from Kobe now to Garp. Perona also takes advantage of the chaos to help Moria escape from Blackbeard's cells. Elsewhere on the same day, Buggy declares his desire to go after the One Piece, inspiring the members of Cross Guild. Sabo also safely returns to Kamabaka, deciding to tell Dragon and Ivankov about what really happened during the reverie. Sabo's mission was to publicly declare war against the Celestial Dragons, rescue Kuma, and to destroy the food reserves of Marijois to put the Holy Land into resource siege by starving the Celestial Dragons. During this time, Saiyan Leop also protected Shirahoshi from Charlos by almost killing him, resulting in the headline of the attempted murder of a Celestial Dragon, which results in the execution of Saint Miosgard, who covered up for them. Sabo helped Bonnie escape to Egghead, but later caught wind of Cobra's meeting with the 5 Elders. During that meeting, Cobra explained how during the Void Century, the Queen of Alabasta was Nefertari Lily, who was the only one of the 20 founders to not become a Celestial Dragon. Cobra mentions, however, that while Lily was supposed to have returned to Alabasta to stay with her people, records show that she never returned, having mysteriously disappeared and Marijois. Imo reveals himself to Cobra in a chapter where Imo is referred to by male terminology in the Japanese release. Imo speaks for the first time, having a fairly childish speech speech pattern and referring to himself as Mu. It's revealed not only that the D clan refers to the people of the ancient kingdom, but also that Imu is in fact Saint Nerona Imu, one of the 20 founders of the Void Century who has ruled the world for the past 800 years. And it's also implied that the 5 elders follow suit and are in some form extensions of him or connected in some way. Imu knew Lily personally, and he explains that it was her fault for releasing the poneglyphs to the world, but it isn't sure if this was intentional or just a mistake. However, Cobra possesses a letter from Lily that names her as Nefertari D. Lily, not just confirming Cobra and Vivi as D clan members, but proving that Lily had been a traitor all along. The letter reads, "Protect the poneglyphs. Bear the flag of the dawn in the face of this something world," with the message not being fully heard, though Japanese fans have pointed out that the writing would fit the words sinking world quite well. Imu kills Cobra for what he witnessed, transforming into some dark and mysterious creature, as the 5 elders also transform into mythical demons as well. Sabo, however, witnesses the scene and manages to escape, but the government pins the murder on him to deflect the blame. Wapol also accidentally witnesses the murder, forcing him to desperately escape Marijoa. He is joined by Vivi, who is a target of CP0 for trying to protect Shirahoshi, who decides to escape with Wapol by hopping onto Morgan's ship, agreeing to protect the two in exchange for the scoop Wapol found out about. During this arc, we are also told the name of the 5 elder planets, fittingly being St. J. Garcia Saturn, St. Marcus Mars, St. Topman Mercury, St. Ethan Baron V. Nasujuro, and St. Jupiter. This pattern of being named after planets reinforces a popular theory that Imu could in fact be the Sea Devil Umi, who in this case will represent the Mother of Nature, the Earth itself in this model. And while it's still all speculation, this theory has only been more reinforced as time goes on, as Imu and the elder planets appear to very much be devils themselves. Day passes from the events of the previous day, as suddenly a massive earthquake hits the entire world. These are the aftershocks of the hole in Leloucha, which caused widespread damage across the entire globe. It turns out in fact that York took part of the Mother Flame and gave it to the 5 elder planets, who then handed it to Imu, who used it to power one of the 3 ancient weapons to destroy Leloucha. By order of elimination, this weapon can only really be Uranus, as we already know of Pluton and Poseidon. However, the Mother Flame was good for only 1 charge of this supposed Uranus, so the elders require more Mother Flames to be produced to continue using this weapon and thus fulfill their aims, bringing the long conflict of the Void Century to a definitive end. Meanwhile, back at Egghead, Admiral Kizaru has arrived with his fleet to surround the island, accompanied not just by 9 Vice Admirals, but also by Saint J. Garcia Saturn himself. During the night, the Straw Hats were barricaded inside the labo face, but they also managed to follow York's plan and capture her. York contacts the elders and bargains for their help, and while the elders first wanted to dispose of her too, they are now deciding to try and keep her alive at all costs, as they need someone able to keep creating the Mother Flame in order to power the ancient weapon more times. It turns out though that the Straw Hats were keeping York hostage, so now the elders have to work together on rescuing York from the island. We see that Stella has been freed too, and he reunited with Bonnie, who has forgiven him after learning the truth from his memories, instead claiming the main culprit to be Saint Saturn of the 5 elders, interestingly enough. Vegapunk also hands her a gift that Kuma kept for her 10th birthday, a necklace in the form of the sun, just like the symbol of the ancient kingdom, as he reveals that Bonnie is in fact a kid who ages herself up and is still 10 years old. Kizaru begins the assault on Egghead, causing Sentomaru to unleash the CP's weapons and Pacifista onto the Marines. Despite their old history, having known each other since Sentomaru was a kid and was taken in as Vegapunk's bodyguard, Kizaru quickly defeats him and uses his powers to pass through the Frontier Dome and head into the lava phase. Lucci tries to take advantage of the situation to kill Stella, but Stussy blocks the hit for him. Kaku is immobilized, so Zoro begins fighting Lucci on the lava phase to get him out of the way. Luffy clashes with Kizaru, but in the process, the Vega Force robot is destroyed, which was supposed to serve as their means to escape the flyaway within the island's atmosphere, leaving the sun is stranded on the lava phase. Luffy, however, transforms into Gear 5 to keep Kizaru at bay, who seemingly can transform into several clones, leaving some to wonder if he could be an awakened Logia. This battle causes the ancient robot Emmet to react to the noise of the drums of liberation, but struggling to get up. Meanwhile, Stella and the other punks manage to decode the Frontier Dome so that they can finally disable it, but Bunny is sent flying to the lower Fabri phase, so Stella decides to go after her to save her life. As Atlas takes the opportunity to turn the Pacifista on their side, however, their orders are immediately reversed as Saint J. Garcia Saturn makes landfall on Egghead, appearing from a demonic summoning circle. He transforms into an awakened Gyuki, a demon from Japanese folklore that is a mix between a demon, a spider, and a cow, able to create potent venoms and able to hurt others simply by gazing at them. Bunny attacks him, claiming he is responsible for Kuma's death, but Saturn simply magically regenerated the wound on his body. He grabs Bunny and prepares to have her executed by firing squad. In these final moments, Bunny recalls memories from Kuma's past that she saw in the bubble. She recalls Kuma telling her about the Warrior of Liberation Nika, who Kuma claimed to be a fan of, always having dreamed of becoming a superhero like Nika. We transition into a full flashback of Kuma's past, where we see all the way from his birth in the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue to his family getting arrested at the age of 4 due to Kuma having buccaneer blood, part of an ancient race with blood of giants and great strength that is now almost extinct. Kuma becomes a slave in Marijua, and despite trying to stay strong, ends up losing his mother and his father, though his father tells him of Nika's legend before passing away. Years later, 38 years ago, in the West Blue, we witnessed the God Valley incident, where the Celestial Dragons were performing their triennial genocide tournament, where they invade an independent kingdom and pillage the resources while hunting down their inhabitants. Here we are better introduced to Saint Figurland Garling, a Celestial Dragon and part of their militia of the God Knights, currently acting as their leader in the present. He's also part of the same clan that Shanks belongs to. At God Valley, Kuma meets a young Emporio Ivankov and his little sister called Genie. This tournament takes a drastic turn when several pirates swarm the island, as seemingly the Celestial Dragon stole one of its prizes from Pirate Island, what is implied to be an important Dao fruit, maybe even Kaido's fruit itself, and set it as one of the prizes of the tournament. This causes the legendary Rocks pirates to ransack the island, including Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and even Captain John, Stussy, and Gloriosa from Amazon Lily, among others, of course including Jebek himself. However, as a result, Goldie Roger and his crew land on the island as well, as does Garp and his marines, leading to a conflict of historical proportions. The slaves take advantage of the confusion, and Kuma and Ivankov steal 2 Dao fruits that could help them escape from among the prizes. But while Kuma manages to eat the pawpaw fruit, Ivankov is stopped by Big Mom, who steals the dragon fruit she will eventually hand over to Kaido. Kuma is confronted by Saint Saturn, who appears exactly as he does in the present, confirming our belief that the elders are perennially youthful just like Imu. Kuma proclaims to him that he wants to become like Nika, but Saturn states that it is precisely for that reason that the Buccaneers must be erased. Kuma however manages to escape with his powers, and alongside $500 people, they are able to leave God Valley unscathed. We do not know exactly how things ended between Roger and Rocks, but ultimately Rocks would be defeated, and Roger would escape from the island and end up accidentally taking a baby Celestial Dragon called Figureland Shanks from a treasure chest and adopting him as his child. Ivankov decides to set sail again, while Kuma and Genie decide to stay behind at Sorbet, living in the old church where Kuma was raised. It turns out his dad was a priest of the Sun God Church, and so Kuma decides to follow in his footsteps, so he and Genie end up living peacefully for quite a few years, making friends with kids from the village and with the local community. Kuma decides to take the pain of the locals and absorb it all within his tough body, which makes Genie uncomfortable, but she respects his choice to sacrifice himself for others. As 13 years have passed, Genie proposes marriage to Kuma, but he skirts around the issue, as he is afraid that Genie might be enslaved again, just like it happened to Kuma's mom. He meanwhile looks up to the actions of Dragon, a marine true protester who formed the Freedom Fighters. 3 years later, his kingdom enters into turmoil when the new corrupt King Bekori decides to split the island in half to turn the southern poorer side into slaves to keep funding the heavenly tribute. Kuma attempts to rebel but is jailed, but he is suddenly freed thanks to the efforts of the Freedom Fighters, now joined by Ivankov, who led Dragon to this island to recruit Kuma and Genie, and thus this group came together to form the Revolutionary Army. As 8 more years pass, 13 years ago, Genie, now commander of the Revolutionary Army's Eastern Army, is suddenly abducted. She was turned into a slave to serve as the wife of a Celestial Dragon who took an interest in her, but the revolutionaries are unable to rescue her. As 2 years pass, they receive a communication from Genie, but she claims that while she got to escape, she is about to die. Kuma quickly warps to her with his powers, but he finds her corpse at their hometown of Sorbet, with her skin having turned into blue sapphire gems. And this was caused by some strange disease that affects the victim's skin when exposed to the sun, which caused her husband to want to toss her away in disgust, even after she got pregnant from him as well. Genie managed to make it back to Sorbet with her kid, but only her baby survived, so Kuma vowed to take care of that child as she were his own, calling her Bonnie. He continues working as a revolutionary while also acting as a caring dad at home when he can. However, Bonnie ends up developing the exact same condition her mother had. As the years pass again, Kuma desperately tries to search for a cure as he quits the revolutionaries, promising Bonnie he'll take her to see the outside world someday, until a doctor finally identifies her disease as Sapphire Scale Syndrome and reveals that Bonnie is bound to die before she even reaches the age of 10, but Kuma can't bring himself to tell her the truth. 4 years ago, Bekori attempts to control Sorbet by force again, by trying to replicate the burning of the Great Terminal, so Kuma single-handedly takes down his government in the one-man revolution and eventually ends up killing Bekori so that he doesn't come back. The government however spins this to be a hostile decor by the tyrant Kuma, which is where he got his epithet from, so Kuma is forced to leave Sorbet and Bonnie behind and set to sea as a pirate. At the same time, Bonnie awakens to the powers of her age fruit all of a sudden, unclear how she got them. Kuma then travels all around the world, including the locations where he sent the Straw Hats, in order to find a cure for Bonnie's condition, but is unable to make much progress. After an encounter with Dragon, however, Dragon tells him to try and contact Vegapunk, who should have the technology to help him, especially now that he's relocating to Egghead Egghead after the Punk Hazard incident. Kuma and Bonnie meet with Vegapunk, and Vegapunk promises that he can cure Bonnie's condition. In exchange for the great cost of surgery, he simply asks Kuma to provide his genetic code within his bloodline elements so he can make clones of him to fulfill his dream of creating an army of robots that can upkeep the peace from violent pirates. Kuma claims to just be a pacifist, so Vegapunk calls this the Pacifista Project. However, the government had been overhearing their conversation, and so Saint Saturn decides to make a deal with Kuma. He's willing to let him save his daughter and even pardon him, but he will be required to follow 3 orders. 1. Join the Shichibukai warlords after former member Hanafuda had been defeated by Portgas the Ace. 2. To augment his buccaneer body to turn him into an even stronger cyborg. And 3. To give up his sense of individuality to become a mindless weapon serving the government. Saturn is essentially asking Kuma to give up his very life, but Kuma is more than happy to do so if that saves his daughter's life, though he asked them not to tell Bonnie, which is why she assumed Vegapunk just killed Kuma. Kuma, Vegapunk, as well as Sentomaru and Kizaru spent some months together with Bonnie, until she separated and brought back to the Survey Kingdom to finish her treatment for the next year. Kuma must then separate himself from her until he's turned into a full robot over the next 2 years in order to ensure that he doesn't run away with her, bidding her goodbye, though she still isn't aware of the fate that would await her father. Kuma briefly visits Luffy while training, taking a fascination to him. As it is revealed, Dragon often came to Dawn to look over Luffy from a distance. He also keeps writing letters to Bonnie, but she keeps receiving none due to the incompetence and cruelty of the Cypherpole agents controlling her, which includes Alpha, Khalifa's sister. Finally, as the months pass, Bonnie is fully healed, but the Cypherpole insists on keeping her captive on Sorbet. Thus, she tricks the agents with her powers to escape, and when Alpha tries to give chase, Bonnie knocks her out by imitating Nika's body shape with her powers. Thanks to her ability Distorted Future, she can change the physical appearance of her body into a hypothetical future form. She sets out to sea as a pirate in hopes of finding her father again. As Vegapunk prepares for his final conversion, Kuma confides in Vegapunk that while Nika isn't real, he believes Luffy may be able to provide some very real change in this world, and deciding to believe in him, asks Vegapunk to give him orders to protect the Sunny over the time skip. As Kuma goes through his final moments, he recalls all the people that he has loved in his life, and he tells Vegapunk to leave Bonnie with one final message: to wish her a very happy 10th birthday. Back to the present, Bonnie despairs even further as she begins to realize that Nika isn't real, which weakens her beliefs and powers, and even comes to know that Saturn was not only the one that gave her mother and by extent her the Sapphire Scale Syndrome through experimentation, but also he's the one who fed Bonnie her HH fruit as an experiment as well, making her nothing more than a lab rat. However, just as Saturn is about to kill her, Kuma suddenly drops on the island and knocks Saturn across the face, sending him crashing across the island. However, Saturn continues to recover from his wounds by instantly regenerating, an ability all the elders seem to share. Saturn is confused as he claims that he had Vegapunk install a self-destruct mechanism that would completely kill all motion in his body and leave him in a vegetative state, and yet even having activated it, Kuma still moves on his own. Vegapunk believes this likely has to do with the inherent trait of the Buccaneer race, which seemingly allows will to be passed on even after death, though not much more is elaborated beyond this. After this point where he has saved Bonnie, Kuma however stops moving again. Kizaru and Saturn escalate things by summoning a Buster Call to eradicate Egghead. Atlas, Frankie, Bonnie and Kuma try to escape to the lava face while Stella is busy with Saturn, but Kizaru causes them to collapse midway and fall into the island below as pacifistas get ready to pincer them. However, Bonnie calls out to the pacifistas to stop firing, and all the robots follow her orders, starting to attack the Marines instead, as it turns out that the pacifistas obey to Bonnie above all else. However, Saturn realizes how Vegapunk tricked them, so he pincers Stella's body, fatally wounding him. Kizaru tries to kill the rest too, but Luffy transforms into Gear 5th again, rescuing them from the fall. Bonnie witnesses Luffy transformed as she realizes that Nika is indeed real. Despite being just a mythical superhero, he has been able to exist in reality under the form of the Hito Hitonomi model Nika, meaning that Kuma's belief was right all along. Furthermore, suddenly the shores of Egghead are attacked by the giant warrior pirates, as the Rimbroggi have recovered from their duel at Little Garden. Having heard of the news from the nearby Elbaf, they came to Egghead in order to escort the Straw Hats out. At the same time, Katarina Devon and Van Augur from the Blackbeard Pirates make landfall and briefly meet with Saturn, with Devon taking a copy of his appearance for her Delph fruit. They claim that each has a special bloodline and that it makes him special.